points that I wanted to get into, and we're going to start with Joe Rogan versus Neil Young versus Spotify. And I want to start with this because I don't want anybody listening to this podcast to get any sort of preconceived notions as to like who we are, what we're talking about. All five of us who are here today are vaccinated. We're not out here fucking anti-vaxxers, whatever you want to say. We're all playing by the rules. We're not having any sort of slant in this conversation on that perspective. So fuck yourself. You're going to come in here with that. Two, I will not create a tier for a corporation. I don't give a fuck about Spotify. I don't care about Amazon. I don't care about BlackRock. That is not the point of this conversation either. What we're here to talk about today is the conversation about why did Neil Young pull his music off Spotify? Is Joe Rogan really in that much shit? And what the fuck is going on? So I just wanted to start out by laying that out there. Let's lay out the facts to start. So Neil Young, of course, of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, his own solo career, said that he was going to pull his music off of Spotify if they did not take Joe Rogan down for his comments that he made on two different podcasts that were conversations with doctors about the vaccine, and he's saying that vaccine misinformation, right? The two doctors that were on were Peter McCullough, who's a cardiologist, the most published cardiologist in the world, and Dr. Robert Malone, who has 9 mRNA vaccine, what is that called? Patents. And is one of the most published people in his field as well. So he had two published people, two very respectable, fucking formidable people in their field on to talk about the vaccine. Now, first off, we've talked about this at length on this podcast. I wish Rogan would shut the fuck up about this. I'm not here to defend Joe Rogan or whatever about this whole situation. I wish he would talk about aliens and unicorns and fucking doing DMT. I wish that's where it would go, but that's not where we are right now. So he's having conversations with people who don't necessarily agree with the main narrative. And that's where we are today. Neil Young gets his shit taken down off Spotify. Joni Mitchell takes her stuff down off Spotify. Other people threaten. Nils Lofgren comes out of the fucking clouds of the E Street Band and pulls his shit down off Spotify, where it's like, dude, you're just jumping on a fucking narrative here. Shut up. Nobody gives a fuck about what you're doing, Nils Lofgren. Just shut up.
I've never heard of him.
Okay, yeah.
I have a theory on this, by the way, but keep going.
So this is where we are. We're in this conversation as to why did this happen? Is there ulterior motive? Is Rogan in the wrong? Is Neil Young in the wrong? Is Neil Young being paid by somebody else? There is so much to digest here, and it has a lot to do with the current state of the music industry, the current state of the world. This is a fucking nuanced, deep conversation that I don't think people are taking it that way on social media. And when I saw all this happening, I got really up in arms because I'm tired of the people on the super, super far left supporting whatever fits their narrative. I'm tired of the people on the far, far right saying like, yeah, you go Rogan, when they don't even give a fuck what's really going on. They just want to say fuck you to the guys on the left. I'm tired of it all. We need to get to the bottom of this. And I thought the first person I would kick it to here would be Dante, who I just mentioned wrote a beautiful article on Barstool Sports. Dante, in your research that you did for this, what did you find in the entire situation?
First off, is anybody else high besides Kenny right now?
Yeah, Dave.
David?
My dude.
Will, did you smoke a JJ today?
No, and I did not.
But you always have
a pretty good split.
I was gonna say you always have your vape with you, though. You do.
So I just got off a plane. I took the last flight to New York because we're gonna get buried with 3 feet of snow in Chicago tomorrow, and I had to get out here because we're not gonna be able to get out for 2 days. We got the Barstool holiday party tomorrow, and then I gotta go to Vegas. So I would have been stuck in Chicago. So I just got to my fucking hotel. You guys are the best for waiting up to do this for me. I'm gonna pop a fucking gummy right now.
Yeah. Enjoy. Dominus Nabisco, my friend.
Okay, so now it's 3-2 is who's high and who's not. So this really is a Joe Rogan podcast at this point.
Colin, go grab some like spray paint and huff it real quick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go huff some.
Dave looks high.
Yo, Will back me up on this. I've never smoked weed before in my life. Will, have I ever?
What?
True. That's true. Yeah.
Fucking mistake,
I'm waiting.
Man.
Now, this is another piece of content we've been talking about. If we do the Fish concert or the 420 thing in Denver I was talking about today, I will smoke weed on camera. I will pop my cherry on camera smoking.
I gotta tell you, man, there's nothing worse than somebody's first time. It won't go right. You'll smoke a lot of weed after that, but every time I've had friends like the singer of Anti-Flag, who had never smoked weed before in his whole life. We finished the whole record. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get high with him for the first time. Worst experience of my life. No, you don't want to, because you don't want to, like, they're gonna be like, time's moving fast and all this. Yeah, like, do it first at home and then go to the Fish concert and do it.
No, I have to do it. No, what I really want to do is that
Fish is
show
going to
with-
make it worse. You know that, right?
Fish
Fish
will
is going to make it
worse,
a lot
absolutely.
worse.
No, what I was gonna say is I want to do it with Pepper and Method Man in fucking Denver. I was talking about that earlier in the
Oh,
group
no,
chat.
you don't.
If Method
No,
Man
you
hands
don't.
me a blunt, I will fucking
Dude.
smoke it.
You will be in the hospital if Method Man hands you a blunt. But that is wet as fuck if it's coming from Method Man. Let me tell you this though, Fish. I feel like if you smoke weed at Fish, you're a bitch because I was just in Wrigleyville when they played at Wrigley Field and I saw shit. I didn't even know you could do drugs like these people were doing. They were fucking sucking balloons and floating off to outer space. Kenny, what's even in that shit?
They're
that
fucking
they were doing?
nitrous,
Nitrous
bro.
oxide.
Nitrous.
Yeah,
It's
it's not.
My
yeah,
God.
it's Whippets, baby.
It's Vin
Yeah.
Diesel. It's what he puts in his car in the Fast and the Furious, dude.
You have to be
Everyone
more.
wa-
You
everyone's
have to be
walking
more
around
poor to know
balloons.
what it is.
Everyone's walking around balloons. I was like, what the fuck is this? And then they're sucking on them in like zombieing out. Anyways, all right.
And they
Back
got their
to-
finger in the air.
Back to cracking a nice bottle of screw off vino right here.
Nice, just lobby special.
And
I got the
Dante's
old
really
fashioned here,
fucking
bro.
Juicing up for this one.
Let's go. He's ready, dude.
Uh,
This is an important conversation.
Yeah, I
Hold
don't want to get on like a big rant. I'd rather hear what you guys have to say. But as I mentioned in the blog, it's hard to fucking see any side to this that isn't influenced by money. And it's just sad because it seems like every fucking issue nowadays, I mean, I don't want to get into like conspiracy theories and COVID and all this shit, but it's like even this pandemic is like money and influence is playing a huge part in how decisions are made, how things are fucking spun. And it's the same shit with this. And it's like, you want to look at it as face value as Neil Young is taking a stand for what he believes in. And, you know, it's personal beliefs versus personal beliefs, but it's not at all. It's fucking corporate interest backed by massive private equity against a mega fucking distribution platform. It's like, it's not like you and me arguing, you know, my opinion versus your opinion. It's fucking corporate interests that I don't care what you say at the end of the day, when somebody pays $150 million for half your catalog and wants to fucking receive a return on their investment, they're gonna pull some strings to see that return. So I don't know. I'm just so like disappointed. Not in this situation, but more so in humanity. The way that everyone is just so blind to, and like you said, it's just all division. It's like you've got the people on the left saying Joe Rogan's a fucking quack. He's killing people. He's spreading, you know, lies and rumors. They've never even listened to the guy. Then you've got people that worship the guy and also that haven't listened to him, but just hate fucking cancel culture in the left that are, you know, just taking up for him because they love confrontation. And it's just more division. It's just division. That's like the United States 2022. So that's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna drink my wine. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, William, since you're here, I want to kick it to you. And like I said, William is one of the smartest, most empathetic people. He cares about everything. I don't know how Will gets anything done. He cares about people so much. So my first question is, Will, just give us your base level of where you stand on this.
So my base level of stance on the situation is that there are multiple situations to have a stance on. You know what I mean? Like, okay, someone can have an opinion of Joe Rogan and what he says. That's an opinion on someone else's thoughts. totally fine. You can have a separate opinion then on should Joe Rogan's podcast be able to be on Spotify or not. That is a separate thing you can have an opinion on. So, you know, like in terms of where I stand on things, do I, you know, agree with everything Joe Rogan says? No. Do I think he deserves to have his podcast taken down from Spotify? That's up to him and Spotify. Do I think Neil Young is allowed to, you know, pull off of his catalog off of Spotify as collateral to force Spotify into a decision on that? Sure, he can do that. You know, it's literally just all a war being waged through capitalism. It's just people shifting money around and throwing around their weight.
Well,
So like,
Will, let me ask you a question real quick. Do you believe that Neil Young really believes in what he's talking about? This is, I think I'm
dude,
kind of
do
like,
you know who Neil Young is? Like, he's been about this. Like, Neil Young is a legend.
Neil Young's had some real bad stuff come out in the past couple of days.
Neil Young
Dante was a part of your article.
No. But I'm just saying, Neil Young is a literal legend. Like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, 1970, they put out Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Song about 4 Kent State students being massacred by the police.
Yeah.
Do you know what Southern Man's about? Do you know?
I do.
You know, he released a song in 2006 called Let's Impeach the President. And he was talking about W.
For a second, I got confused in my timeline. And I was like, was he talking about Obama?
That's what I thought.
Like, where is this guy?
Yeah.
Exactly. And he released, like, I don't know, he's got a song After the Gold Rush that's about like environmentalism. He's always been about like nature and conservation his entire career. Like he's always been about this. So you can't say that like this
I
is
don't
some
want to cut
new
you off
thing.
for a second. But Dante, you were bringing up a point. Does Neil Young own his music enough to make this decision?
No, and that's like, that's where it gets really like phony. And I've said this before on this podcast. There's nothing I hate more in general than phoniness and in music, in business, and in people in general. And for someone to sell out to, I mean, this is probably going to be libelous. These people are the fucking scum of the earth. So
who, BlackRock?
If it's ever got on their radar. Yeah, BlackRock. I mean, they're like, I don't know if anyone watched Mr. Robot, but they're like Evil Corp. They're fucking scum of the earth.
Aren't they the ones buying up all the houses and shit across the country too?
Yes. So every subdivision that is showing like a flicker of movement, you know, an upward trajectory, they're scooping up everything they can, cash. So they're driving the fucking real estate market up so that families and, you know, young families can't fucking afford to buy their own house. So then they're renting from fucking, you know, BlackRock, and, you know, BlackRock's forming these management companies, and it's all like umbrellas. So you don't know it's them. And I mean, at the end of the day, like everyone's in business to make money, but they're just like nefarious with everything they do. So they're also involved in the music game now. And they have this subsidiary called Hypnosis, which is like perfect because I mean, it's like, you know, to hypnotize people. I mean, it's like they're just throwing it out in people's faces, but they're buying up these catalogs, and they're hoping that as things continue to move to subscription-based models and no one's going to own anything in the future, you're not going to be able to buy songs, buy albums. People, you know, allege that they're going to, you know, recoup this money. They're also trying to license these songs out to, you know, commercials and advertisers.
It's all sync, dude. All sync money.
They're whoring out they're buying these fucking catalogs and they're whoring them fucking out. And for Neil Young, which Will just said, you know, this is fucking man of the people, you know, like Southern man, even though he's from Canada, like, you know, rambling man, you know, he's fucking, you know, common man and all this shit, for him to sell out for $150 million to these guys, like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Like, just fucking spare me.
Well,
And
now we will get, because I want to get further into the BlackRock thing, and I want to like direct it towards the end of the conversation. But like before we get into like the deeper aspects of this, I want to get baseline on everybody, right? So Dave, you're up. Dave, give me your baseline feeling on what's going on right now.
I mean, I'll start by saying I'm not shilling for fucking Joe Rogan at all, but like after doing just an ounce of research, just an ounce of it, I am fully Team Rogan on this. Fully, like, there's not much you can say. And to, like Will said, like, if Neil Young wants to go and shill out for 150, and perform it, like, that's on him too. Go for it, man. But I just hate how they operate under the guise of like we the people. It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. So.
No, I knew kind of where you were on this from different conversations we've had, and I don't want to get too much into because I'm going to cap this off when we come back around. But Kenny, where do you stand on this to start out? Not that you give a fuck about anything.
Well, hang on. Let me take a sip of water, or else I'm gonna die.
I'm really interested in hearing Kenny.
I know Kenny's brain is surprisingly still working really well.
Yo, don't put that much fucking pressure on me. I even wrote down some notes.
Oh my God, you cared.
Edward Snowden put it the best.
Yeah, he did.
If you get your fucking
Dave's
medical
enemy?
information from Joe Rogan, look at the fucking logo. Look at what he talks about. Farting, shitting, pissing, DMT, fucking aliens, right? Like, if you get your medical advice from Joe Rogan, then fuck you anyway, is number one.
Yeah.
Number two, for me, whether it's real or not, and everybody jumping on the bandwagon, it's the wrong hill to die on. It's like, you're going to remove your music over this fucking whatever censorship bullshit. But we've been talking about Spotify's unequal royalty distribution for years. Yes. For songwriters, producers, from labels, and how much they pay labels versus songwriters and all this different shit. You're going to go to town for this, for Rogan. But nobody's going to stand up for fucking what we've all been fighting for legislation for all these years. Like, that's one of the most fucked up parts of it to me.
Kenny, you fucking said something that was going to lead me directly into my next point, in that this is where I got pushback on from people in the industry that would text me and say, there's no way you can take Rogan's side. And I don't even know if that's what I'm doing, but what I think I'm doing is more laying out a question of
but Colin, like, what, like, this was the point of my blog. Why do you have to take a side in this?
Exactly. I was just about to say that, Dante. I was just about to say
that. There's nothing wrong with respecting Neil Young's decision and respecting Joe Rogan's platform.
Thank you.
This is, yes, like, but you don't have to take a fucking side in this.
People are having to take a side because these days, with the way the world works, it's either all censorship or no censorship.
You're programmed
nothing
to take
in the
a
fucking
side,
middle, right? Yeah, no, nothing in the middle. It's like, one of the last things I wanted to say was, this all started with Trump's Twitter getting taken down and all this different shit. Now, to me, the president should be held to a higher standard than literally everybody else in the whole country. And if he says something that pisses off another country, whatever it is, different story. Everybody else, no censorship. Say what the fuck you want. Don't listen. Don't get your medical advice from this fucking dumbass.
What did I tweet from the podcast account that was what got me text messages from people in the industry? I tweeted, guys, we're talking about a fucking comedian's podcast. Is this the hill we're going to die on? Now, this is where, go ahead, Will, after you.
No, it's like, do you think he's a comedian when he does the podcast, though?
No, I think that's a bullshit cop out. 100%.
Okay, there you go. Because like, he can't just always hide behind, just because he does stand up sometimes. He can't just like hide behind that for everything else he does.
But how many times can he say on the podcast, do not listen to me, I am a moron? I mean, I've heard him say that
all the time.
1,000 times.
All
the time.
So I saw him live in Nashville. I like lucked out. I saw Chappelle and him live, and he addressed, and this is fucking months before all this bullshit, But this is when the controversy started to bubble up and people were like, you know, why is Joe Rogan talking about COVID and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And he said to the crowd, he goes, if you are getting your medical advice from me, you have way fucking bigger issues.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's true. And it's like, I don't know. I agree. Like the comedian thing is a cop out. Coley wrote a great blog, which I referenced in my blog, where he said, it's not Joe Rogan's fault that he has evolved into this voice he was. I mean, he was a pioneer. One of my favorite fucking clips on like Internet 1.0 is when he was still doing Fear Factor. He went on David Letterman and, you know, he was talking about podcasting and Letterman was like clowning him. Like, what the fuck is podcasting? And he's like, oh, it's like radio, but it's recorded and you can listen on demand. And Letterman was like, good luck with that. Like, that's fucking the worst idea I ever heard. Fucking fast forward 15 years, he signs $100 million deal. Like, he was at the forefront of podcasting. So I respect the fuck out of him. He got where he's at through hard fucking work. He's built his audience. He didn't fucking like just drop in from nowhere. And, you know, so he deserves to speak his mind, talk to who he wants to talk to, and ask the questions he wants to ask. And I don't know. I'm rambling again. Guys,
there is like a weight to the platform though, right? Like I guess like it's almost the equivalent of like if you're like a teenager and you go in your backyard and you just like whip around a stick and hit random things, you know, you're not going to do that much damage. But if you're like in the backyard and you're waving around just like a loaded shotgun like that, you know, like there's definitely a difference in the weight of the platform. So the responsibility level,
you're right.
Like Kenny was saying, like a president's the highest, but like your responsibility level, you have to at least come to acknowledge that like there's gonna be some people who listen to you
but see, I don't
gullible.
I was told, I think I told this story before by fucking William Corgan. He said, this is honestly, this line's always come back to me a million times over. He said to me, I refuse to live up to a standard that I didn't create. I refuse to live up to an expectation. That's what it was that I didn't create. Right. Like, I love that. I get the weight of responsibility and all that stuff, but also like, I'm not responsible for shit. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm saying like responsibility to the point of like, if you don't fulfill that responsibility, then your entire podcast is taken from Spotify. Like basically it's like, okay, you deserve a little bit of a, you know, like critique from society. You're not immune to it if you start doing crazy stuff.
Now, the one thing we haven't go ahead, Dante.
No, but like, here's the thing. And honestly, like I never listened to Rogan, and I'm not like trying to throw Dave under the bus here by any means, but I'd say like a year ago, Dave started sending me, you know, like podcasts and was like, you got to listen to this. Like, this is a great episode. And, you know, I was always like, you know, Joe Rogan, like he's always fucking high. He talks about weird shit, but I started listening to him usually on jogs. And I was like, this stuff is really fucking interesting. He is like, honestly, I put like Larry King at the top for interviewing. Tim Ferriss is pretty fucking good. And Joe Rogan is like right there because he's curious as fuck. He is pretty impartial. Like, I hate to say it and, you know, burst people's bubble. And he's open-minded and he has these great conversations with people. They don't fucking rush. They don't put a cap on it. They'll fucking go 3 hours. That Kanye interview he did is, I've listened to that 8 times. I will never get bored of that conversation. I wish they went for 12 hours because it's one of the best fucking like I'm just a sponge listening to those talks. So if you listen to these episodes that everyone's up in arms about, which I did, Dave fucking sent them to me, or the first one, he is not like, he's not a proponent of anything. He's not vouching for anything. He's asking like legit questions, follow-up questions, and he's letting these people talk. He's not like, you know, vouching for them. He's not pontificating to his audience. And I feel like all these people that are pissed off about it haven't even fucking heard what, like they just.
None of them have. None of them. Absolutely. If you're going to be pissed at the rhetoric they were spewing, that's one thing. I mean, they are very credentialed in their respective fields and should be afforded as adept in those fields as they are, the right to speak what they see as scientific. But don't get pissed at Rogan for it. He's asking questions and offering up a different view. Like, all right, so here's another one on the flip side. So Dante, you know who Dr. Arwadi is?
No.
Yeah, you do. You see her all over Twitter. That's the city of Chicago's public health. She's like,
yeah.
So today she said that she had a press conference with Lori Lightfoot. Neither of them are popular figures in Chicago right now for obvious reasons. So they tweeted out the video of her presser, and she had a quote saying, "We're doing great with Omicron. We're talking about lifting the mandates, and like, because you got to be vaxxed to get into the bar, and mask mandates soon. And they're gonna they're gonna give it to her later." I looked at the quote tweets, and it's a bunch of fucking crazy people saying these, like, fuck Lori Lightfoot for lifting these mandates. It's like, where do we draw the line about following the science?
Dude, there's a large, it's fucked up. There's a large segment of people. I don't want this to go off the rails. There's a large segment of people, I feel, that don't want this to ever end.
Yeah, they want to stay like
I've
this.
said
Yeah.
that
What I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's like, and these people are the loudest in the room, and it sounds like the right thing to do and say to beat this virus. I don't think with America as split as it is that's ever going to happen. But like, I'm reading these.
But on the other side of that, right?
Scientists and fuck that science. It's like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So who gives a shit what these two guys say? Because they don't know what they're talking about either. Probably nobody knows what this fucking virus.
Well, that's where I was actually going. So now on the other side of that conversation, there's also a large contingent of people who like to act like nothing's going on, that there was never anything wrong. That's a fact. There's a large group of people that like to act like COVID was a giant hoax. It wasn't. A lot of people died. A lot of people lost their lives.
They still are, man. They
still are. That's the whole thing. So,
dude, my buddy went to the hospital last week. He blew out his knee. He couldn't even get near the emergency room. He had to wait and go back the next day because people were literally coming in like dying. So
my mother's a nurse. I've heard all these stories, right? But this is where,
Colin, don't you wish that like that was the shit the news showed?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
I wish the news showed, and I know it's fucked up and it's morbid, but they show worse shit on TV nowadays. I wish they showed these fucking like emergency rooms overflowing and people like
video.
People begging for the vaccine on their deathbed and this shit, because I think that would fucking like wake people up and register with them like, yo, this is serious, because there is misinformation out there.
Yes,
it's not coming from Joe Rogan. It's coming from these people that are like, you know, the vaccine is like meant to kill people. It has fucking microchips in them.
Yeah.
Which is just asinine. And this is kind of where I want to get. And this is the conversation I wanted to move towards, right? Why is Joe Rogan so popular? Because people don't trust the news networks because they've become so partial one way or the other. That's why Joe Rogan is who Joe Rogan is at this point.
Amen.
Because he'll have competing arguments, or not competing arguments, but competing
at the
sources
end
of
of the Dr. Malone interview, Joe Rogan says himself, he's like, you threw a lot of crazy shit out there. And the guy said so this author, Dr. Robert Malone, he offered, it was $50,000 to anybody that will take him up on a debate on an open forum. He's like, it can be a college kid, I'll pay for your education, whatever. And Joe Rogan immediately like looked to his producers, and you could hear him kind of off mic a little bit saying, hey, can you set this up with so like Joe Rogan is like actively trying to put competing viewpoints on his platform, but going back to the original topic at hand, fucking Neil Young never one time listened to those interviews. Not one time. And you're trying to censor someone that has just a wide array of voices and perspectives on his show because you heard that he had these two guys on. He does fucking 5 shows a week, 3 shows a week.
So here's my whole point. This is why I thought this conversation was so important. And this is what set my, I don't know, my
competitive activism, and that's I hate more than anything.
My point in this entire thing is why I wanted to have this conversation was my first question was, why now, Neil Young? Why is this the moment where you feel confident that you can pull your music off of streaming and this is the hill you want to die on?
Colin, but you heard me say, like, this is not why now. This is Neil Young. This has been Neil Young. And this is like completely consistent with everything he's done for his entire career.
Now, I agree, William, and this is why I have you on here to bring something like this up. But my point is where I was going. Spotify allows creators who have blatantly racist takes like Steven Crowder, who have crazier takes like Tucker Carlson, who have crazier takes like fucking Ben Shapiro on their platform. And Neil Young never said a goddamn word. But now is the time where Joe Rogan has scientists on and fucking people who create mRNA vaccines on, and he comes out and says, if this motherfucker is allowed on this platform, I'm not on there. You can go find like communist Nazi propaganda on Spotify if you look hard enough. And that was never enough for Neil Young to say, take my shit off Spotify. They don't pay their artist. They don't pay their artist at all.
Dude.
That wasn't enough for Neil Young to take his shit off Spotify. Why is it this?
Charles Manson has a fucking Spotify account with songs on it.
That's awesome. Point. Don't make me like
that. That's why my question in this entire situation was, that's what my bullshit meter went off with. And that's the conversation that I had with my friends in the industry as to why is it now?
Dude.
Because it always felt to me like this was not about Joe Rogan. Because I don't think Neil Young knows who the fuck Joe Rogan is.
It's not.
Dude, it's like so I'm not in Neil Young's head, but let me give you a potential answer to your question.
Now that is
because
why you're here, William. Please
the more we just start asking questions, it just sounds like, oh, what about this? But what about this? And what about this? Sure. It's like we're not talking about the thing anymore. So like, so I don't know. I'm not in his head. Let's say like on the completely one mindless side, basically Neil Young came across some article that said, you know, some crazy doctor who's been on Hannity and Tucker Carlson also went on Joe Rogan and said all the same stuff that they usually say. And he got real mad and he did something about it. You know, if that's the case, which it kind of sounds like, because he is, you know, an old guy. He's like in his mid to late 70s. He doesn't really know the internet. He probably doesn't even care that his music's on Spotify in the first place. You know, he's just like doing his thing. He's set for life. You know, he's just got his music catalog.
But BlackRock cares. And
yes,
I would agree with you until 2 days later when this Amazon promotion goes on.
That was where I was going with this. I was totally impartial on the Neil Young thing until I saw the tweets saying, here's 4 free months on Amazon.
Yes, dude.
That's where my fucking antennas went up, where I was like,
this
what do you think that is? What do you think that is, though?
Dude, but this goes back to what I said when we first started this conversation. It's all about the money with
exactly
everything in this country, in this world. It's all about the money, and it's like you want to respect somebody for taking a stand on something, and then you actually peek behind the curtain, and it's like, oh, it's fucking, they're getting, you know, greased by the biggest company in the world right now.
Yeah, you can't fucking whoop-de-wop me. It's the internet, man. It's 2022. Fucking whoop-de this.
I mean, so here's the other thing too, and like I'm not to like pat myself on the back, but all these articles I read about this whole thing, nobody referenced this, but I knew because I remembered it. Neil Young fucking went after Spotify like 5 years ago because, and this is back, and this is the other thing too, is people don't fucking remember. Spotify is huge now and it's a household name. It took a long time for them to get where they are now. A lot of artists refuse to fucking deal with them. Taylor Swift is like the most famous. She held out forever because of Colin, what you just said. They pay people shit because they charge the customer shit. They can't fucking run a profitable business by paying the artist shit. So they basically force artists into posting music on there because it's such a big service now and it's so popular, but the artists don't see shit on there. It's more of a marketing thing than anything. So
Dante, real quick. Me and Will had this conversation in the studio last week. We're waiting on our distribution. We have over 2 million streams on Spotify. We haven't seen money.
What do you see? $500, $800?
We haven't seen anything yet. Do you know how much 2 million streams nets you? Kenny, do you know?
Less than 10
like
grand.
$3,000.
Bro, I'm like literally sending emails over $3,000.
Yeah, like $3,000. And that's before everyone takes their pound of flesh.
Yeah, exactly. That's for 100%.
Yeah.
Do you understand that? And this is what I said at the beginning of the interview.
I do understand it.
What I said at the beginning of the interview was, I'm not here to cry a fucking tear for Spotify or Amazon. Fuck them all to death. I don't care about them. What I care about is the fact that I'm interested as to why this is the moment that Neil Young and fucking whoever follows him up.
Because he's already went after them for another like reason, but money's at the fucking end of it. He went after them because their streaming quality wasn't high enough for his music.
I agree with that. Dude, Apple Music has better streaming quality.
Dude, in Tidal is better than them, but nobody fucking has Tidal. So you get what you pay for, and 99% of people don't notice the difference, but we're like audiophiles, so we know.
We're nerds.
Fair criticism.
So he pulled his shit down. I think it was 2017. He pulled his shit down and said, I'm not fucking allowing Spotify to carry my music because my fans deserve to hear it in higher quality. Come to Tidal. Fucking Tidal, he invested in it. It's another fucking corporate thing. This guy is not fucking Mr. Common Man. Like,
he's a credit card hippie. You know what I mean?
So phony, dude.
He's like the rich hippie.
Phony. So fucking phony, man.
I don't know. Like, this whole thing set me off down and I've had a lot of really good conversation. This is what I like. I think one of the hardest things to do in music today is to have an opinion, because a lot of times people who are in the entertainment industry want to take one side. And this is one of the conversations I did have, was like, I want to talk to the people who are over here applauding Neil Young and know, one, do they listen to Rogan? And two, do they even know the kind of like the backstory to all this? Do they know why they're applauding Neil Young? Or are they just saying fuck Joe Rogan? And that's what irked me, and that's what I wanted to have the conversation about. And everybody who I've talked to, we've had good conversations where it's like, oh wow, there might be more to this than we think. And it's like, I think Dave said it earlier, I'm not shilling for Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan even acknowledged the fact that he can do a better job of, you know, either vetting out these conversations or bring on opposing viewpoints, which I also think is kind of bullshit, because not 2 months ago, he had Sanjay Gupta on, who's a fucking medical examiner for CNN. So he does have the other side on there as well. So we can't.
No, he does.
That.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just, no, it's Colin. It's what you said. It's him coming into a conversation with just a little bit of background on something so that it doesn't go totally off the rails. Because I think like the reason why Joe Rogan, the reason why all of his podcast episodes are so interesting and so like they feel so deep is because, one, they're 3 hours, two, nothing is off limits, and it's literally just stream of consciousness conversation. But like in, you know, particularly the episodes that became criticized, it's like the conversation seemed open-minded because basically you were having this really long conversation back and forth, but just with less facts present or known in the conversation. So like, there's a lot of like questions that you can raise about something that all of a sudden sound interesting and need answers. But if you don't know that, like, oh, there's that thing you can go look up and it has the answer, like, then you don't go down this huge rabbit hole of, you know, wackiness that I think some people see, and they say, well, that's really harmful because I'm looking at the packed emergency rooms and I think that's horrible. And I think that the people who are listening to this and believing it, you know, at their own peril, and you're ridiculous for believing in the first place, which is why I think the content warning is all Spotify really needed to do in that situation.
Which is fine. And Rogan said that was cool. That was fine.
Yeah, but yeah, they just think that people are going to believe it, do stupid shit, and then we all suffer for it. So, well,
gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Do you think anybody who is not vaccinated yet is going to get vaccinated based on what Joe Rogan says? I don't. I think that if you are a person who's sitting at home right now with the thought in their mind, you know, trust me, some of my family members, some of my closest friends refuse to get vaccinated because they have their own personal beliefs. That doesn't mean I don't talk to them. It just means that, like, they have their own personal beliefs, which I make fun of them for, but that's okay. Like, I don't think that anybody's listening to Joe Rogan and is like, you know what? I was going to go to CVS today. I'm not going to do it anymore. I don't. I think that it's been out for long enough now that.
No. You know, I don't. Go ahead, Dave. Oh, I was going to say, I listen. When you say stuff like that, though, there's 300 million fucking people in this country. You've been on tour. You've seen the people in them small cities and different places. Like, there are plenty of people who will take that fucking word as Bible. Like,
I mean, dude, have you ever been to Chicago? Like, what a shithole that place is.
No, yeah. Like, all right, here's the thing. The vaccine has been as easy to access for at least in Illinois since April. You can walk into any Walgreens, CVS, whatever, and get shot in 15 minutes and you're good. Get it 2 weeks later, you're good. So all these people that like, these episodes came out in October. Those episodes weren't changed. Your mind was made up by that point too. Who the fuck is he killing? All these, if you're not vaccinated, you're probably not going to get vaccinated. If you are, you are, and you'll get the boosters.
Well, and I thought the one part that was really interesting when we talk about his, I don't want to call it an apology. It wasn't an apology. It was more of an addressing the situation.
Yeah. And it was great.
I liked it.
Great.
I did. And the one part I thought that was really interesting that he brought up, right? And this is where I think he's kind of a genius in a certain perspective. He laid out facts and he said, you know, I bring on these people who are experts in their field, who might have a disagreement on what the main narrative is. But, you know, 6 months ago, if I was on the air and I said that cloth masks don't work, I would be deplatformed because that would seem to be misinformation. But it turns out that's actually true. And that could be a point that was raised previously. Or they could say that, and this was information that was passed down through different channels, that if you get the vaccine, you're immune to the fucking virus. And once again, I don't want to talk about this shit. I fucking hate talking about this shit. But what I was going to say was Rogan said if I would have said that, you know, 6 months ago, then that would have been considered misinformation. None of us know. I'm a fucking musician. I'm a songwriter and I'm a bartender. I'm a fucking moron. I don't know anything. So like I don't feel the right to like say what is true and what is false. I think the whole thing is when you have someone like Rogan who has the largest audience on earth, literally the largest audience on earth. One, I think it's admirable that he has different perspectives, but two, and I think this goes back to a point that Will made earlier, and I think Kenny brought it up as well. When you do have the largest audience on earth, you do have responsibility, whether you expected it or you planned it to be or not. So when he comes out and says, I can do better, if we need to put a disclaimer before an episode, I will. But more than anything, I'm not going to, I need the competing narratives because it helps people grow and change and learn different things. So where I fall on this is Rogan certainly in the wrong in some perspectives? Yes, and that's because he has a lot of responsibility. But on the other side, I still question why all this is going on. I don't think this is purely Neil Young being a fucking rah-rah against the man kind of a situation. I think there's larger money involved. And I really just don't see this as a fucking one guy making a stand thing. Also, why is it that only old rock stars are the only ones saying anything?
Right.
Why aren't people talking to fucking Taylor Swift and Gunna and Drake? And why aren't people talking to Ariana Grande?
Because they all listen to and love Joe Rogan.
Sure, yeah, that might be it. But I also think, once again, a lot of these musicians who are fucking saying shit have already sold their catalogs and they're controlled by somebody else, and that might be why they're speaking up. But I want to know, why is it only 75 to 80-year-old musicians, and we don't look to the youth or the hip hop culture or the pop culture? We're only looking to old rock stars. When did rock become the pussy genre? When did it become the fucking people who were always like on the right side? I don't know.
2017.
This whole thing is so confusing to me. And as someone who I like to consider myself taking all sides, I don't understand what this is, and I don't understand why it's so divisive. I needed to talk to you guys. So I'm
You're saying this.
fucking
You're
glad
saying
we're
the
here.
same stuff that I thought when I first heard this. It's like, why
Right.
is everyone talking about this so much? Because literally, it's an old rich rock star throwing around his money. It's Joe Rogan just like shooting from the hip and not really, not really moderating, but that's his style. He's just like, oh, I found myself in a crazy, million listeners situation. And then you have Spotify, which are like, well, we took down 20,000 episodes that were about COVID, but not the one that we paid $100 million for. It's like everyone is just like, it's all a stalemate. Everyone's just going to throw money around and then something will come of it. I don't know. Spotify apparently lost $2 to $4 billion in market value. I don't know. Maybe certain things
but
are having effects,
the whole market lost a bunch of money.
They
Like,
were
I
up
mean,
14% today.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw Dante tweet something.
You know what?
I saw
You know what's
Dante
gonna
tweet something
happen?
great. Go ahead.
You know what? It's like with the internet, the curtain is pulled back. Everybody sees everything. It's not that hard to find out that it's all money driven. But you know what's gonna happen? Absolutely nothing, ever, fucking happens. Nothing. Like everybody gets all up in arms and blah blah blah, and we're gonna change this and that. And it's like, I don't care. Fuck.
Colin, I think the answer to your question, Colin, is like, why is everyone looking to this person? Why is everyone looking to this? It's just put in front of us by articles that we read, and everyone gets drawn to the stories where we all take these hard sides and yell at each other. So like what Dave was saying is that like everyone's so extreme and you have to pick a side. Dante was saying it too. Everyone has to pick a side. It's like, we're actually drawn to the things that make us pick those sides. Like, why are we even talking about this in a way where we're team Neil Young or team Joe Rogan? It's like, well, they both can coexist and just like yell at each other and it's fine.
It's like, why aren't we team fuck Spotify or team fuck BlackRock? Like, we're all picking these two morons who know nothing realistically, and we're like, that's who we're gonna base our opinion on, when realistically they're not even the people that are really involved in this. It's the fucking people who control both sides. Like, man, this shit is what really like keeps me up at night. And that's the
God forbid people talk to their doctor about medical issues. Are you fucking kidding me?
Or God, this is a great, another fucking great segue, Kenny. Or God forbid people fucking talk to each other. So this was my thing. Like, I wrote about the minute this broke last week, not this week, last week, when Neil Young announced this. I was like, I have to blog this because I just know this is gonna become a fucking huge thing. Like, I just
that's not how it went. I sent it to you. I'm like, you need to blog it because I wanted to, knowing it would be clicks, but you do it way better than
Dave is 100% right. Dave texted me. I was in the BVI's, so I had like no internet, and he goes, "Are you seeing this Neil Young shit?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Look it up." Found it. It's like, wow, this is like ridiculous. And he goes, "Yeah, you need to blog it. Like, you'll do it better than I would." So Dave's right. If I didn't think it was going to be a big deal, I wouldn't have agreed. But I was like, this is going to become a fucking big thing because this is how everything is nowadays. And here's my whole thing. How much more effective do you think it would be if Neil Young were to go on the Joe Rogan podcast and have a civil discussion with him? He can even bring on Fauci or one of these other, doctors or experts that is very pro-vax and, is in his camp. and just have a fucking discussion. I mean, they would reach so many people. People would fucking tune in from both sides.
People will still learn nothing.
It would be so valuable, and it would be so much better than just one side yelling at the other, cancel, 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 cancel. It's like, that's all we fucking do nowadays.
Well, Dante, and because this is a music podcast, I think this is like one of the things I wanted to.
And you wait real quick. You know, for a 1,000,000,000% chance fact that Rogan would agree to that immediately.
Oh,
100%.
No strings attached. He should get a challenge on his, like, do a fucking Instagram video or something. No strings attached. You bring your cameras, just like
Joe, because he's not out to prove a point on anything. No. He's out to ask questions and provide a different perspective on shit, which as a listener, you know, as someone who doesn't listen, you think he's promoting shit and propaganda and all this shit. That's why these people are fucking flipping out, because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
But it's to bring this up back to a music conversation. So we have a situation where people pulling their stuff down, which is one thing, and that has a lot more interest behind it. But like the thing that really interests me was the reaction from people in the music industry who were tweeting either, you know, go Neil Young, fuck Joe Rogan, like fuck all this shit, like do your thing. Or I saw a great tweet that was like, my buddy pulled down his music. He has 9 monthly listeners. Like he really proved this point. Like it's to me, like even the text that I was getting from people being like, yo, you need to watch yourself if you're going to talk about this.
Dude,
to where I was like,
I'm uncancelable, baby. Come on.
No, no. This is a really good conversation in the fact that like,
but Colin, why? Like you're not tweeting or like taking a side of like a racist fucking.
Yeah.
You're also not a doctor.
No,
yeah, that's an unrealistic fear.
Sure. No. This isn't unrealistic. This is real text messages that I received. And what I'm saying is, when I had conversations with people, because you can back me up on this. When we were going to have this conversation, I reached out to a lot of my friends and said, I want your opinion on this, because I don't want to go in with a slanted opinion before I go and have the conversation. I want to know whether or not what I'm saying is unrealistic or stupid, or if I'm just coming off hot. And I had good conversations, but like the fact that if you're a musician or you're supposed to be on this one side, right, you can't have the conversation. Otherwise, you're going to wind up getting labeled as an anti-vax fucking weirdo who loves Joe Rogan. That's not right. I think it's a very interesting place that we're in right now. I think it's a fucking crazy time to fucking be in music and be alive and listen to all these conversations. But more than anything, I think that we haven't gotten to the real crux of what this whole thing is really about. And I got my tinfoil hat. It's a Sixers hat, but I had my tinfoil hat on.
Bring us home, baby.
I got my fucking tinfoil hat on. Realistically, this is where I leave on this. One, Joe Rogan can do a better job of vetting things out, or realizing his position in the world as being the #1 source of news, whether he wants to or not. He's gotten to that position now, and he needs to be really on top of his shit if he's going to be who he is. And that's great. I'm a Joe Rogan fan. I'm also a Neil Young fan. And if you want to pull your shit off Spotify, feel free. All the people that are like pulling their shit off now, like Nils Lofgren, who are like, yeah, look at me too. Buddy, take a seat. Somebody already took your fucking spot. I'm sorry you're not getting the attention, but Neil Young already took your spot. But realistically, at the end of the day, I'm not crying a tear for Spotify. I'm not crying a fucking tear for Amazon or a tear for BlackRock. There is more to this than what we're talking about, and I don't know. I don't know where I land on this, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to ever cry for someone to be deplatformed. If Spotify wanted to fucking penalize Joe Rogan, that's one thing. If they want to deplatform him, that's bullshit, because the guy's not saying anything that realistically is that out of the fucking ordinary, and he's talking to people who are prospectively experts in their field, and that's where I leave it. Does anybody have anything else to say on this topic?
No, dude, it's like it's I don't want to sound cheesy, but that's a fucking First Amendment right to free speech. And he's not hateful. He's having fucking conversations. That's something that I personally take very seriously. And I think, I mean, people fucking die for that right. You know? Yeah. They die for that right.
Dave, if you didn't have that right, you couldn't say that you wanted to have sex with a cartoon lion.
Exactly. Exactly. Like
I don't want to live in that world.
No, you don't want to live in that world, right? So like that's why like I know like Will actually did change our mind on that. Like, why do we have to take a side? But it's hard for me not to for that reason. Like, you don't fuck with that, right?
I think it's just like people start taking this and they conflate where like your opinion on whether or not Joe Rogan should have his platform taken away or not is a one opinion. Your opinion on COVID is another opinion. Your opinion on how cool of a guy you think Joe Rogan is a third opinion. And then like if you think Neil Young is just, you know, crazy and ineffective or a freedom fighter, like that's a totally different opinion. And it's all different because you could believe like none of those are mutually exclusive. So people just see it, it's like, oh, I think Joe Rogan has deep conversations, and then someone else conflates that with you're a conspiracy theorist or I love Neil Young. Oh, that must mean that, you know, it's like people are just not even thinking about what they're talking about because they're just using this different situations over and over again to disagree about the same things. Like these are philosophical things that we're talking about, and it's just a different stick figure here and a different stick figure over there. We're arguing about the same things.
Facts, dude. Damn, Will. God damn it. I'm so glad you're on this episode. Holy shit. But I think too that's a great way to cap it off. And at the end of the day, I think like I always pull back to like the music industry side. I think the fact that like I was even kind of worried about having this conversation says a lot to where we are today, because I didn't say anything crazy. We didn't have a conversation one side or the other, but even talking about it, part of me was like, I'm going to get a text from somebody this week. It's going to say like, hey, you're a fucking piece of shit because you talked about this. We can't live in that society. We can't live in this draconian society where you can't even talk about something.
Those people won't have listened.
Are you wearing a Neil Young t-shirt?
That motherfucker went and put that shit on.
I want to prove a point. I've had this shirt forever. It's fucking shrunk on me a million times. I'm a huge fucking Neil Young fan.
Me too.
Listen, dude, I still am. Like I grew up before I even knew who he was. My mom used to fucking play Zuma all the time. I'm a big Neil Young fan. I think he's way out of line with this whole thing, but I respect that he has a fucking opinion. He can think what he wants to think. He can do what he wants to do. At the end of the day, I'm still a fan of his music. I'm not going to fucking boycott him. I'm not going to fucking ask for him to be canceled. None of this shit, because I have common sense and logic, which a lot of fucking people don't nowadays.
Okay, bye-bye.
I want to ask one question. If this situation, and be honest with yourself thinking this, if this situation was Kid Rock, who is an extreme right winger, I would say is equal to as extreme as Neil Young is on the left, was calling for like the Daily or Pod Save America. The Daily's like a huge New York Times liberal podcast. Mm-hmm. Really good, but it's really left leaning. Michael Barbaro hosts it. If Kid Rock was calling for this podcast to be taken down and he was going to fucking pull his music down if it wasn't, and all this shit, do you think it would be getting the same coverage as this story is, in the same lens as this story is?
It'd be pretty juicy. I think it'd be like fun. It's almost like eating like dessert the entire day and then having something savory at night. Like you're just like used to the same stuff, and automatically the script just gets flipped and you're just like, whoa, where am I?
I mean, that's a hard thing though, Dante, because on the political spectrum, sure, it's an equal comparison, but like on a respect level.
Yeah.
You're right. You're talking
what Kid Rock does. Yeah,
exactly. You're talking life and death.
Always good.
Well, Kid Rock was also in Joe Dirt, so I automatically.
Kid Rock is also a rich white kid from the suburbs of Detroit. Like he's not actually a fucking redneck either. When it's all
Which is
money.
like also another part of this conversation that makes me laugh is it's just a bunch of rich white people yelling at each other. Like
Yo,
literally,
it's market
Neil Young,
opportunities. Done.
like it's
deal.
It's just like of all the conversations in the world, and this was one of the things I also tweeted, of all the terrible things that happen in this world, why is this what we're talking about? Why is this what we're so fucking focused on?
Let's stop talking about it. And you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to upload my new fitness record to Spotify tomorrow. Fuck it.
Yes. Oh, I mean, well, that actually is a perfect segue.